And we're going to talk about margin today. Margin basically allows us to make better decisions, build deeper relationships, do things more efficiently, and live the life you really want. And I'll talk about that a lot today, because that's the quest that our clients have been pursuing is I really want to live the life I really want and not just the one I ended up with. And so because I've been applying this to my life for the last few years, I know it works. And I want to share with you today. We all live very busy lives. And I know that people struggle to do the things that we feel we should be doing, let alone the things that we want to do. And so this is what margin allows us to do. This book is based on a book by Richard Swenson. He wrote this quite a few years ago, but it talks about the idea of margin. It says that most people have exceeded their limits for so long that they don't even recognize it. I love this quote. Most people see their limit in the rearview mirror as they blow by it at 100 miles an hour. We constantly push past our emotional, our physical, our financial, and our time limits to live a life without margin. But we've done it for so long, we don't even recognize it anymore. We commit 120% of our time, and then we wonder why we feel overloaded. It's rare to see someone pre-schedule their life to less than 100% of their capabilities. And then it doesn't allow for the unexpected things to come our way. And they come our way all the time. In the pursuit of progress, things have become limitless. We live at a crazy pace and we just strive to maintain it. But life has limits and they will demand our attention whether we like it or not. And when I talk about margin, I'm talking about the difference between your limit and your load. So to calculate margin, you take your limit, all the things you can handle, and you take your current load, what you're carrying, the burden you have, and what's left over is your margin. It's simple math. But most people are not aware of their limits, so they live past them, and then they become overloaded, burned out, frustrated, exhausted, angry, defeated, and they shut down. Sometimes they shut down for a long time. Most people are used to living without margin because they don't know it exists, and they didn't realize it was gone. Nobody will ever fix a problem like this, but business leaders do it all the time. We live a life of overload. If I had to use one word that described my clients these days is it's exhausted. How you doing? They just say, I'm exhausted. I mean, we went through COVID, we survived, we adjusted in 21, we figured out how to thrive in 22, and now in 23, they're just tired. You may not feel this way, but I bet a lot of people on your team do. And I'm confident that most people are overloaded and it's affecting your business. It's affecting their personal and professional lives. Therefore, it affects your business. And it manifests itself in our inability to focus. It builds anxiety. It's stress. It leads to a loss of sleep. And if not addressed, it leads to panic attacks and depression. And I want to help you see areas of your life where you're currently overloaded and how this might be affecting you. And it seems odd to me that we would be overloaded when you consider all the advances our society's had in the last 100 years. We have more comforts and conveniences than past generations ever dreamed about, yet somehow we feel stressed and overloaded even more. We have 10 times the amount of material abundances, but we are not 10 times more satisfied or content. We get more stuff, we learn more stuff, and usually at the expense of our minds, our bodies, our souls, and our relationships with others. Margin helps us be more productive at work, create deeper relationships with the world around us, and improves the health of our bodies and our souls. Most people I know live in a world of exceeding their limits for so long, they don't know another way to live. One at a time, we could probably handle exceeding our limits for a while in one area or another, but they always seem to stack up and demand our attention at the same time. And I'll show you that they have an effect on each other that we may not even see. And the effect of all three affects the fourth area, which is emotional energy. And if you've not maintained a minimum level of emotional energy, you will not have the ability to maintain life well. Most people put more time into their work each week at the expense of family, friendships, rest, and fun. They have no margin. And they think it's no big deal, but it's affecting their performance at work and the quality of their life. And this leads to overload. Let me be clear. Load is not an enemy. Overload is the enemy. I am a pro-load person. I like a challenge. I like to do a lot. I rarely rest. And I struggle to keep from overloading myself. And you might say, well, obviously I've not exceeded my limits because I'm still functioning, right? Maybe, but you could just be one straw away from breaking the camel's back. There's a limit to where we stop being productive and we start wearing ourselves down. Look at this chart. As productivity is going up, stress continues. And at some point, you get to a place where you're at optimal performance. And we love that. We want people to push themselves to be their best. We want to strive for cranking out as much work as we can. That's a good thing. But at some point, we move from a productive area of optimal work to start to decrease in our performance, and the stress just continues. And as our performance goes down, it's harder to get things done. We do more time at it, which increases the stress. So the stress continues, but we're actually making less productivity, and we're actually on a dangerous journey towards fatigue, burnout, and exhaustion. And no one knows when they move from A to B to C on this chart. There's no alarm that goes off. So we need to create margin to keep us from overloading. And I'm not telling anyone to work less hours. I am pointing out that there are limits in how productive you can be. And without margin, your ROI or your ROT, your return on your time, starts to drop and you head towards exhaustion. So the question is, do you believe you have limits? Like the number of good decisions you can make in one day, or the number of angry people you can treat with kindness in a week. Most leaders continue to press beyond what they acknowledge that their limits are, almost like we know we have limits, but we don't act like we believe it. So if I ask you this question, you might say, yes, I believe I have a limit. But when I look at your life, you may not be living like you believe it. Like you believe you should have 8 hours of sleep in a day, but do you do it? You believe that there's a limit to how many great decisions you make, but do you act like that? Margin recognizes there are limits and helps us thrive within them. The idea of limits is hard to accept. We feel like we can push ourselves to get by with more, do more with less sleep, to run faster, to be in more meetings and squeeze it all into our calendars, which sounds great, except we're not measuring the performance that goes along with that. And if you're in a zone past your performance that's optimal, you're wasting your effort and time, and you're facing fatigue, exhaustion, burnout, and a diminishing return for your investment of your life, ROL, your return on your life. And we're facing dangerous decision-making processes. One bad decision during a time of overload can be really detrimental to your life. It can be detrimental to your company and certainly for your relationships. But since most people don't know when they've exceeded their limits, they continue to work and make poor decisions, and we're not on top of our game. For example, we deceive ourselves and we say, I can still perform my work responsibilities with 5 hours of sleep, a stressful marriage, problems with my health, and looming debt. You might be able to physically walk in the office and get things done, but you are not on top of your game. And in many cases, you're just moments away from a hard crash. I've seen it. The only way to avoid all this is to establish margin in your life. We must develop the mindset that there are limits in life and we need to act like it. The reality is, no matter how hard you try, you will never get it all done. So acknowledging that's a fact, acknowledging you have limits, you purposely create margin to be able to optimally perform your best at work and still enjoy your life, thereby avoiding overload and burnout. We choose wisely, we prioritize our life accordingly, and we make trade-offs in order to have the life that we really want. The word excellence is often misused in our business community. And so for our time together today, let's define excellence as the best of your ability to pursue the life you really want. Can I encourage you to write that down? In my world, as I work with business owners, I look at the journey they've been on and I keep asking them, are you living the life you really want? And most of the time it's no. In one area or another, or in many areas, they're not. And so excellence requires that you're doing the best of your ability as you pursue the life you really want. That's what I call excellence. Many people tell me they're doing great in their responsibilities in life because they base it on one or two key areas of life and they let that overshadow the rest. Look at this chart. Sometimes people will say, my business is doing phenomenal. We grew 20% year over year the last 5 years. It's fantastic. But your relationship with your family is in the toilet. We're making a ton of money. Cash is great. But I've walked away from my faith and my relationship with God. I exercise. I'm in great health. I've lost 20 pounds. I'm stronger than ever, but I never rest. In our definition of excellence, you can't have anything below the zero line. Giving 120% to one area at the expense of the other ones is not excellence. So when we talk about with our group members, we say anything that still remains below the zero line excludes the ability to say you have excellence. Now, we all have businesses to run and lives to maintain, and everything has to keep going. That's the burden of a leader. We're juggling everything, and everyone's looking to us like, what do we do? And you have to keep it all together. But if we don't create a life with margin and we let something tank in our lives, it overshadows us. We bring it to work every day. And that haunts us in our ability to do our job well. So you can't say, well, leave your personal life at home, because you're coming to work with you. And if you is not the best version of you, you're going to not be the best version at work. So leaders need to be concerned about how their employees are living their life with intentional in creating margin. And I found that in order to have the life you really want, you need margin. And what it looks like will be different for you than it was for me, but something needs to be done. Richard Swenson talks about in his book 4 areas of your life that you could work on that are very common sense approaches to making margin. And we'll just focus on these 4 today: time, finances, health, and emotions. There could be other areas, but man, if you could just deal with those, that'd be good enough. It's important to note that all 3 areas pull from the reserves of each other, and all 3 definitely pull from your emotional energy. We'll talk about this a little bit more. And since you can't know how much emotional energy you have at any time, you have to work hard to create margin in the other 3 areas so that you are protecting the margin in the emotional energy area. Think about the people on your team or other people in your life. And if you applied this concept to work and a personal life and started finding more satisfaction in all areas of your life, what would our company be like? As leaders, we need to care about our employees because they're bringing this junk to work every day. And if we say, that's not my problem, it becomes your problem. We see it all the time in the tragedies that happen at work, but just the day-to-day junk that goes on. Let me press on to the first one. Time is certainly the easiest one to track and to do something about. There's only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can't get any more. It's limited. And you get to decide what you do with your time because it's yours. And when you don't manage your time well, you create the pressure to keep up with it. And then the problems when you run late or you have to cancel things. And I just was talking to a client who said, I'm not creating buffers. I was talking about creating buffers in between time. Don't have a meeting followed by a meeting followed by a meeting. And he says, well, I didn't have any time. I had to go this. No, you could have said, I have a hard stop at 10:50, taken 5 minutes to go walk around and get some breathing room, make a few notes, and then jumped on the next call. It's that simple. You own your calendar. But we make excuses like, well, I couldn't, or this was the schedule they set. You own your time. And so we work more hours, we take work home, we walk around with a computer in our pocket or our purse, and it makes it almost impossible to focus on the moment because we're constantly distracted by something else. And this just makes us hurried and stressed and overworked and frustrated, and it pulls from your emotional bucket. And the sad thing is we do this to ourselves. We give away our time so easily. Fight for your time. Take it back. It's yours. I think most people struggle with this. You try and cram it all in every day. You have a hard time saying no to meetings or events you really don't need to be at. Are you evaluating what is the best use of your time as you work to have the life you really want?
These are roughly 28,835 jelly beans. I counted out 500 of them and used those to weigh the rest. In this pile, there's 1 jelly bean for each day that the average American will live. You might have more beans in your life, or maybe less, but on average, this is the time we have. Here's a single bean. It's your very first day. A special day, but kind of a rough day on everyone involved. Add 364 more and you have the first year of your life. Now, for a sense of scale, here are your first 15 years, 5,475 days, which brings us to the threshold of adulthood. And at that moment, this is the time that we have left. And this is, on average, what we will do with all that time. We will be asleep for a total of 8,477 days. If we're lucky, some of that time we'll be sleeping next to someone we love. We will be in the process of eating, drinking, or preparing food for 1,635 days. We'll be at work, hopefully doing something satisfying, for the equivalent of 3,202 of those days. 1,099 days will be spent commuting or traveling from one place to another, maybe a little bit more if you live in LA. On average, we will watch television in one form or another for a total of 2,676 days. Household activities, like chores and tending to our pets and shopping, will take another 1,576 days. And we will care for the needs and well-being of others, our friends and family, for 564 days. We'll spend 671 days bathing, grooming, and doing all other bathroom-related activities, and another 720 days will go to community activities, like religious and civic duties, charities, and taking classes. After we remove all those beans, this is what remains. This is the time that we have left. Time for laughing, swimming, making art, going on hikes, text messages, reading, checking Facebook, playing softball, maybe even teaching yourself how to play the guitar. So what are you going to do with this time? How much of it do you think you've already used up? If you only had half of it, what would you do differently? What about half of that? How much time have you already spent worrying instead of doing something that you love? What if you just had one more day? What are you going to do today?
I love that video. What are you going to do with the days that God has given you? How will you spend them? Dare I say, enjoy them. Take your priorities, put those in first, and then fill around them. You have all the time you need. You just need to be more intentional about how you use it. Anyone can adjust their life to add margin. I'm doing it right now in my life. It's possible. And it's what's required to do if you're going to create the life that you really want. There's a sheet that Marcie said about that's in the handouts in the chat. And then these 4 worksheets, they're places where you can make notes of ways to get more margin in these categories. And these are some of the ones that are on that sheet. And they're simple things like saying no for meetings or turning off the tech. But science shows that if you're watching something on a screen before you go to bed, you don't have as good a night's sleep. And so you need good health. That pours into the health bucket. Plus you're saving the time. When you say, I don't have enough time to do something, but you waste an hour on Instagram, not that that's bad, but only if you're stressed about doing other things. So you can use that worksheet to find ways to create margin, and helping your team find ways to put margin in their time is going to come back to you, because when they don't manage their time well, they stay at work late, then they miss the family time, causes stress at home. Then they've got to worry about that, deal with that, which takes their attention from work. They come back to work carrying that big bag of crap full of stress from all the time they lost because they didn't manage their time well. And it just repeats itself and it drains out of the emotional bucket. And then they're not at the top performance of their game. Let's go to the next category, finance. This is another area that you can measure and track, but unlike time, you can cheat on finances. You can get credit cards and loans. You can spend more than you earn and just not pay. Most people in America do that. The debt ratio is ridiculous. 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And all this is just adding stress in people's lives, which creates worry and drains the emotional bucket again. The debt ratio in our country is ridiculous. I don't think people are getting the kind of help to manage their finances well. And you would think, well, they're adults, they should know this. They don't. We actually know the logic of money, but we've grown okay with having no margin in our finances. It's socially acceptable to have debt and to buy things on impulse and to spend more than you earned. But is that really the life that you want? It doesn't match our definition of excellence. If my finances are below zero, which means I have more debt than I can handle, or it's more than I can afford to pay off, I'm living in a deficit, and that's below zero. That doesn't make excellence. People think they have margin because they're making minimum payments on their credit cards. That is not margin. And the weight of debt constantly drains out of your emotional energy bucket. Lots of employees will leave a company just to make a few $1,000s more to make minimum payments on their credit cards. And then once they start making more money, they spend more money, and the cycle continues. It's dangerous. One of the best things we can do for our employees is teach them financial stewardship. If you really care about them, bring in a financial expert, teach them how to write a budget, help them save money, because they live under this burden of debt and it haunts them and it affects their ability to perform their job well. Here's some things to work on to get margin in your finances. These are not complicated. Start with a budget. That's real easy. Some of these things are simple. Cut up your credit cards. Just stop spending money. One of the things that we did was we learned to give away money. You give away money, it doesn't mean as much to you if you can give it away. And it feels awesome to give to other people. There's a lot of need out there. You can find something to donate to. Your effort to increase income has a tendency to eat away at your time and health. So in saying, I don't have enough margin for my finances, I'll go get more money. Just remember, you're trading off something to get that. Because if you take a job or start a new business, that's going to take up more time, which will probably make you work longer hours, which reduces your sleep and increases your stress, which affects your health and your emotions. Everything is connected. Probably the better solution is to spend less money. Spending less money doesn't require more time, doesn't make you stay up late, doesn't add more stress, but it can move your finances above the zero line. The next one's physical energy. And our health is often pushed aside in this crazy pace we live in. It's hard to determine how much margin we have in our physical energy, but we can do things that we can measure. I mean, we could do a lot to hurt our body and still get away with it. Like, how much pizza and beer can I have in a week and still fit in a swimsuit? Or how many few hours of sleep can I get, still get to work on time? But it still is affecting us. And there are things we can measure, like how much we weigh, blood pressure, number of hours of sleep, how many days I work out, calories I eat. There's lots of things we can measure. And remember, we might survive the abuse that we do to our body, but it's affecting us somewhere. It's affecting us financially. When I have to go to doctor visits and have treatments or take medicine that's expensive, or I have sick days, that's affecting my finances. And if I'm not taking care of my health and I don't sleep well, then it takes me longer to get work done because my focus is bad. These things affect our ability to perform with excellence. So in the physical energy, some simple things are just change some habits. Get up and walk around in the middle of the day. We had a breathing instructor come and present to our CEOs recently, talking about how simple it is just to take 5 minutes and do some breathing exercises. And it makes a measurable change. You can actually measure your blood pressure go down. These are simple things: drinking water, getting up, walk around, getting a good night's sleep, maybe cutting out some of that pizza. One of the things that I've learned to do is to observe the Sabbath. It's a true day of rest where you actually unplug, where you don't do all the chores that you couldn't get done before, but you actually rest and refresh so you're ready for the next week. Here's a quote I heard: 95% of people look forward to the weekend to rest, but 52% of them report that they are more exhausted by Monday than they were before the weekend started. That's nuts. We can't even rest well. Everyone needs a true day of rest from doing what drains our minds and our bodies and our soul. God created the Sabbath and asked us to keep it set apart for a reason, because he knows we need rest so we can enjoy the life that God's given us. And for too many years, I used my Sabbath as a time to dump everything on it I couldn't get done on Saturday. Not anymore. We really, truly rest, and it feeds my soul. And I come back on Monday focused and powerful and ready. You need a true day of rest. The results will come back to you 100 times over. It really does. I recommend a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. It really teaches you about this pace that we live at and how to fight against it. Okay, this one's hard. Emotional energy is our last one. It's impossible to measure, and we really don't know our limits until we exceed it. All my past is a part of who I am. Marital issues, pains from childhood, problems with our friends, issues with our kids, worries about the future, plus all the emotions that I carry for all the people I know in my life, our employees, our friends. It's just too much. And then we deplete our emotional energy. We have nothing to give the world around us because we're just in survival mode. And you won't know when your emotional energy is out until it's gone. I recently had an issue with my sister, Ginger, who has dementia. And one weekend, my wife went to California to visit family, and my sister got really sick. She was staying with us. And over 2 days of not having any sleep and cleaning up her bodily functions that just couldn't stop going on. She had some kind of virus. We ended up taking her to the hospital finally. By the time Monday rolled around, we were exhausted, but I still had a meeting to get to. So I could do like most business leaders, I just show up and grunt it out. And I went and sat at this breakfast restaurant to talk with somebody. And about 10 minutes into it, I just started crying and I couldn't stop. And he's like, "What's wrong, man?" I go, "Dude, I got nothing. I got nothing." But I live in the way that you just show up. You just suck it up. Nobody cares. Go to work, get it done. But there are limits. And I had exceeded my emotional limit, and it was proving that it was going to win out. You ever have a moment like that? You show up to a meeting and something simple happens and you just explode on your team. And they're like, "What's with that guy?" And you spend the next few days trying to clean it up, do damage control. Too often we drained our emotional energy to critical levels and we never even see it coming. I mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. The other three areas constantly are pulling from the reserves of the emotional energy bucket. And since you can't know how much emotional energy you have at any time, you have to work hard to continue to protect the other three that you can measure and be aware of in hopes that it doesn't drain the emotional bucket. And the best way to keep that emotional bucket is full is by protecting the three areas. Emotions derail us, they confuse us, they lie to us, and they can make working with other people really hard. It affects good decisions. It keeps us from having rich relationships and enjoying our work. Here's some few ideas from the book that can help you. Seek reconciliation is a great one. If you're mad at somebody, they don't care. It only hurts you more than it hurts them. They're probably not even aware of it. Create boundaries. Give thanks. Thanks is a great way of creating an emotional bucket. I don't have this. I don't have that. Yeah, well, let's focus on what you do have. That's very filling. Laugh and cry. Be real. Some of our core values are show love, serve beyond expectations, pursue excellence, be real, and have fun. Those are our core values for our business. Being real is a big deal. Everybody's hurting. Everyone's got junk. Everyone's dealing with stuff. Being real builds a common unity between the world around you. Healthy relationships are one of the best protections against stress-induced damage to your health. It does, however, require you invest time and effort to make that, and that can take some margin out of your calendar, but the reward is priceless. Being open and honest with other people can pour back into your emotional energy reserves. Don't assume everybody's fine just because you're feeling okay today. The reality is that we're carrying a ton of stuff around, and it's draining our emotional buckets, and it is affecting our work life as much as our personal life. So just asking people, "How you doing?" And then looking at them and listening to them while they talk. And don't look at your phone, and give them your attention for just a minute, because you have built time in your calendar where you have margin to care for the world around you. You can stop and listen and actually care for them. And as much as a lot of leaders that I work with are nervous about crossing that personal line with their employees because of what it leads to, not crossing that personal line, it's still going to happen. It's just you're not going to know it's coming. We can proactively work to help them be their best. One of the reasons why people don't reach out and ask for help is because it makes you feel weak. I want to encourage you to change these words, to look at this differently. What if you said, instead of I need help, I want help? It's recognizing the skills and experience that you see in other people and inviting them in to help you be your best. It's not being needy. It's saying, I will do better and create the most efficient outcome if I tap into your amazing skills. And then we build trust between each other because we've been real with vulnerability and transparency. I know this sounds huggy, kissy, whooshy. For dudes, it's hard, but you're going to face this either way. I want to embrace it full on at my pace than have it thrown on me. It improves communication and it helps us get things done easier when we ask for help. Lastly, my faith in Jesus Christ is a big deal to me. It's my personal faith. Margin creates room in my life for the movement of the Spirit of God. And I want to be available when God brings something in my life that he wants me to spend time with. But if my life is overloaded, there's no room for God, and I miss out on the opportunities he's planned for me. If I overextend myself and I become overloaded, I don't have time for God or whatever he wants for me. I don't even have time to breathe. It's just exhausting. If I don't create margin in my finances, I don't have money to give graciously when God brings people on my path that he wants me to use his money to bless them with. Now, I know that not everyone believes what I believe, and I don't tell you how to run your business or how to manage your health or your time or your finances. And I'm not telling you what to do about your faith. I'm just saying faith is a big part of what makes you a whole person. So don't ignore that. As a follower of Jesus Christ, I find guidance and wisdom in the Bible. It tells me how to view the times I live in, how to view my finances, how to view my body, and it gives me peace that fills up my emotional bucket. Whatever your faith is, it's okay to pursue it with excellence, with the same kind of passion or greater than you do your company or your health or your money. It's worthy of your attention because it's part of who you are. And ignoring it brings stress in your life. It builds a void that needs to be filled. Let your faith lead you in this journey because it fuels other areas of your life. Don't feel guilty to pursue the life you really want. It's your life. And when you live intentionally, you have more satisfaction and joy, and you bring this to work with you every day. So my challenge to you is go read the book, Margin by Richard Swenson. You could download these worksheets on our website, margindfw.com. Share the videos, share the ideas, have your team members take the margin assessment that Marcie sent you, fill it out and score it and talk about it. Do something about it. Teach them, give them the tools, help them pursue excellence in their life too, because that's all going to come back to our company. The more I let them pour into their lives to be the best version of themselves, the better they're pursuing the life they really want, the better they are at work. And then let your family and your team know about the changes you're going to make to create margin in your life, and let them be inspired by your journey and encourage you in the process. You have these sheets. There's 4 different pages: time, finance, health, and emotions. And I hope you'll take the time to fill those out, look for places where you can apply them in your life. In order to live the life you really want, you need to stop making excuses or blaming others, and you just need to own it. That's why we wrote the book, Nobody Cares. It's about personal accountability. The book is actually titled Nobody Cares Until You Do. When you care enough in the pursuit of the life you really want, to make the changes that you need to have, and to stop making excuses or blaming other people or say you can't or waiting and hoping it gets better, if you own it and you do the hard things, your life is better. I know because I did it in my life. And Salem Thine and I wrote this book together to share stories of our lives where we've seen it and experienced it. And we're encouraging you, if you want to pursue the life you really want, you've got to own it.